Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. There is another story that, in fact, Amanda had sent to me and that we were tracking for Friday, but then I shared it with you, Dr. Granpeesheh, and I want to at least mention it. Psychology Today has said we've been knowing for a while that there's a group of people who have been asking for a new designation for profound autism, and the Lancet Commission has now called for this. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about this and your feelings about, do you think this is the right move, and what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I do think it's the right move, and I'll tell you why. I never really agreed with the DSM-5 in the sense that, well, I mean, so there were pros and cons. So, when the DSM, by the way, for our viewers, is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's what DSM stands for. And we're currently on the DSM version 5. So I've been through many, many DSMs. I think I trained originally when I learned about autism, we were on the DSM-3. And then came the 4 revised, and so on. And so every few years there's a new diagnostic manual. And usually it's because there's a new disorder that has been discovered, and people are writing about it, and science has this, started to provide more information about it and so on. But with autism, it has always been there. It's autism, as we know, was originally defined in 1943, so it's been around for a long time. But every single time the diagnostic manual comes out, the definition has changed. And it's one of the few mental disorders where we keep changing the definition, which, I always, in my speeches, in my lectures, I always say that's just one other indication to tell you we don't know much about it. But when, what used to be before the DSM-5, as you know, Shannon, there was autistic disorder, and then there were actually 4 types. And then there was Asperger's, which I thought was very important to separate Asperger's from the other forms of autism, because individuals with Asperger's really are extremely high functioning. They don't necessarily suffer from the second category in autism, which is sort of the ritualistic repetitive behaviors. They more struggle with the area of just social behavior. And so that, to me, has always felt like a different thing. And with DSM-5, when the diagnostic manual came out, which, gosh, correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, I think it came out in, I want to say 2013 or somewhere around there. Yeah, so what they did is they merged all of these different types and called it autism spectrum disorder. And yes, it is a spectrum, but and the benefit of doing that, one thing that was good about that, to be honest, was that individuals who had Asperger's could then receive health insurance. And before, it had been extremely hard for them to receive any kind of help because they're so high functioning that, payers felt like, oh, it isn't necessary for them to get this treatment. But once it was all kind of put under one umbrella, then the payer couldn't discriminate and say, yes, the child with autism gets it, the child with Asperger's doesn't. So that was the benefit of that. But I never agreed that this is all one disorder. Right now, what is being discussed is kind of the other end of the spectrum, which is profound autism. And I feel like those individuals with profound autism have been overlooked to some extent because there's a set of resources out there, right? And I can give many examples. And these resources tend to be used for individuals who are not as profoundly affected. For example, special schools. a lot of special schools will not actually take students who are profoundly autistic because they can't handle it. And instead of developing specific programs for those individuals, they just don't take them. They feel like, okay, we're serving the rest of the autistic population, so we're okay. We don't have to. In fact, Shannon, if you know, most ABA providers also just refuse to accept the profoundly autistic population, which I just think is wrong. And these are individuals who, I think in the article I read an example of where it's actually the parent who's writing this and says, there's a whole group of adults who are so severe that they're in diapers at home watching TV all day or something. And it's true. And I have a few of those patients, and they are, it's always the parents who are putting in all of their life, attention, resources, you name it, to make sure that their child continues to survive. So in that sense, I think there's a really good point to separating out the profoundly diagnosed.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while that, the word autism, which is supposed to cover so many things, I wish as we start to phenotype and talk about the different types of autism, I wish we would come up with individual names for each and every one of them. I know insurance can't handle that. But for the community and for the sake of people who feel that they've been left by the roadside, there are many parents who will, say, my child has the type of autism that nobody ever wants to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that those of us in the community know exactly what they mean when they say that, right?
Yeah.
It's man,
Yeah.
it's devastating. And I'm friends with a high number of people on Facebook who would classify their children that way, and I see what those parents go through, because we all have felt like our kids have been left out at some point. But in that contest, which nobody wants to participate in, those parents win.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
and they are left often to deal with, there's no hospital, there's no program. I can't even imagine.
And also, Shannon, there's of course the population of individuals who are higher functioning, and they have a voice. And I think that it isn't right that they are representing the profoundly diagnosed, because of course, higher functioning individuals might say, "Hey, I have autism. Leave me alone. I kind of want to. There's nothing about me that you need to fix." Right, which I absolutely agree and support with anyone who is functional, happy in life. They don't need anything. They don't need therapy, right? But the profound are it's a different story, right? Those who are profoundly autistic, they have difficulty surviving, just surviving. Like, they have difficulty feeding themselves. They have difficulty going to the bathroom. Forget about things like leisure and social. I mean, they can't communicate their pain. There's so many things that are should be treated differently, and it's very, very important. So I think this is a good movement. I'm in support of it, but I will say, Shannon, I don't like where the line is being drawn. Like, they've drawn the line at an IQ of 50, and I can tell you that there's going to be a lot of profoundly affected individuals whose IQ is a little bit higher than that. So 50 is very, very hard. First of all, IQ is a terrible way to differentiate or draw this line, because for 100 different reasons. I actually personally think that a lot of my individuals who are very, very severely affected by autism are actually extremely intelligent. There's really no way for us to measure it, because they cannot express themselves because of other types of issues and disabilities that they struggle with, right? So I don't think intelligence has much to do with it. And I don't like the concept of intelligence entering our world of autism again. I remember the time back in the, I want to say 70s, and a lot of our parents won't even know this, But back in the 70s, autism used to be kind of people used to think that if you have, and it was part of the diagnostic criteria actually, that if you have autism, you also have mental retardation, which is now called intellectual disability. And that I had many years, I would lecture on the fact that this is not true and that it's our testing that is wrong. And so I don't want the concept of IQ to come into this decision. I think it has to do with the severity of symptoms, and IQ shouldn't be one of them.
Amen to that. Oh, I'm muted, I'm sure.
No, you're there.
Oh, good. So I was going to have it because I have a screen up. I appreciate everything that you said about that, Dr. Granpeesheh, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to talk about this. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.